Firstly, I have an apology from Councillor Honour, whose mother passed away last Friday, so Wayne's organising some things to do with her funeral, etc. The second thing is a number of councillors have given me potential conflicts or conflicts of interest for today's meeting, so it might be easier if we just go around the table if you could identify which one's up front, and then when we get to that item in the agenda, if you can then leave the room if that's what you've chosen, or just make sure we've got it on the record. Mr Mayor. Councillor Trevor?
No.
Councillor Bartels?
No.
Councillor McPhee?
Item T1, I know I'm choosing to leave the room.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes?
No comments.
No? Vince? Pass? R1 and T1, thanks mate. And John? L1, you'll leave the room. All right, well that's good, they're all nice and straightforward. So the first item today is the Moore Park Beach Master Plan. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. So this morning we're just briefing on the Moore Park Beach Master Plan. We previously presented on this back in February. This is just seeking to endorse this plan as an official master plan of council's. So we haven't adjusted, so we made some very minor adjustments to the plan since February, just looking to reorientate the community workshop area, item number 13, and that was the main adjustment. We've also submitted the final report that just provides a word picture and a description of each of the areas. Do we need to go back through everything, which I'm quite prepared to do, or it's no change since February? Obviously, this was produced by Inside SJC, and we're now looking to once this is endorsed, looking to commence design for delivery once funding becomes available. Any questions? Excellent.
Financial summary as at the 1st of April 2021. In terms of recurrent revenue, much the same as last report. Fee income and also some of our land sales are above what we had in our forecast. In terms of land sales, at the reporting date we did have 37 parcels which had either settled or were unconditional, and those are reflected in the figures in the report. In terms of recurrent expenditure, the main variance there is materials and services. That's somewhat expected in terms of a lot of the licensing expenses are incurred in the last quarter of the financial year, and also some of the non-capital spend which is related to the capital project delivery, which is tracking a little behind, is also reflected in those figures. In terms of capital spend, year to date 58.2 million, total budget 118 million. Obviously, as we've alluded to previously, there is expected significant spend in the last quarter. In terms of capital grants, we have received approval for extensions of time on some of the Works of Queensland projects. That ranges from, well, most of it's from I think July through to December this year. Cash at the reporting date was 177 million. That is higher than what we expected at this time. The reason for that is the variance in fee income, the higher land sales, and the lower spend on operations and capital as referenced earlier. The rate debtor at the reporting date was 8.9 million. That is lower than what we had this time last year, bearing in mind that this time last year council had provided a freeze on rate interest as part of the COVID relief package. Borrowings at the end of the quarter were 71.6 million, just highlighting that one of the existing loan accounts has been paid out during the last quarter. Any questions?
Item G1 is the operational plan. It's Q3. So in accordance with the local government regulation, the CEO must present to Council a report on Council's progress towards implementing the annual operational plan at least every 3 months. The report has been provided for councillors, and each manager has provided comments as to their progress towards the plan. And the recommendation is that the operational plan Q3 be received and noted.
Thanks, Christine. Any questions? Councillor McPhee.
I just was wondering, with the development applications, the percentage of low complexity development applications decided within the 10 days, what do we have like an idea of how long they are taking, what the average, like is it only like 11 days and it's just outside of meeting that KPI, or are they?
Yeah, look, that's a good question, and clearly those couple of indicators are reflective of the pressure that we're currently experiencing in that area, and we've highlighted that, you know, in the last few months about the, you know, the good news part of that is there's quite a lot of development happening. What I'll do is I'll get additional information out separately about those two that we haven't met, just to see how far removed we are from the current targets.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. Kinkuna Waters.
So stage 2 at Kinkuna Waters, Council has entered into contracts for lot 57, 59, 60, 65, 66, 67, 78 and 79 in stage 2. Stage 2, as councils will recall, was offered for tender just before the Christmas period. That tender was unsuccessful, and now they've been listed for sale. Each of the sales are for market value, and the recommendation is that Council apply the exception contained in the local government regulation, given that the sales were previously offered by tender, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the contracts with the buyers and finalise the sale of those properties. All lots now, councillors, have been sold. They are under contract, subject obviously to special conditions and completions of those sales, and we've just got that one parcel of land that council removed from sale that's left in the estate.
Thanks, Christine. I might just add that parcel will go back on the market once we've finalised the entry statement, and at some point, probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll have consultants come and address council at a consultation day about what stage 3 of that estate might look like, prior to lodging any formal development application to progress that. So clearly the demand is there, and I think it's an opportunity for council to realise additional revenue, but potentially also to have a major construction job involving council's outside workforce into the next financial year as well. Questions? Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, just a question relating to the long-term aspects of that development. Stage 3, how many stages are available to us after that if we were to?
It probably depends, Councillor Cooper, on some of the work that's currently being done on the flood modelling and the drainage. Obviously the stage that we're currently selling was, like most developments, was the easy stage to develop, and there wasn't too many issues in terms of drainage or flooding. The other issue is it's a very long, flat, straight area, and the current development, or sorry, the current owners of any property have to put their own pump in there for sewerage, and there's some issues there we need to work through as well. So although it's adjacent to the Woodgate sewage plant, because of the topography of the land, there's some technical issues that Stuart will be more familiar with than I am, but that's posing some issues too they're looking at. So I'm loath to put a number on it until we get some feedback from the consultants and some of the technical experts on the work they're currently doing.
Yeah, just with the ratio of salesman to CEO, I would suggest that the demand is there, and while the demand is there, the opportunity should be taken up. How far advanced we could get to doing that pre-planning is...
Yeah, well, certainly the demand's there, and I guess it probably caught us unawares for an estate that sat there largely untouched for the better part of 15 years, and then took off in, inside 6 or 7 months.
Yes, it has, yeah. Obviously. So, yeah, that's probably relating to the future, doesn't really relate to the motion. So.
But I think when we have a clearer picture about stage 3, we'll be able to address some of those broader issues that you've raised. Yes. Councillor Trevor.
We use that last block to test the market as to what the value should be going forward?
Yeah, we already have. We've spoken to 2 agents, and they've indicated that the asking price currently is around 140,000. So I'm not telling any secrets out of school that when we put that block on the market, that'll be somewhere in the vicinity of that price.
I'd suggest we should try north of that, because that will truly tell the picture.
Yeah, it may. Having said that, it's not the best block in the estate because it's next to the main intersection into the subdivision.
It's the only block in the estate.
But it is the only block, yes, that's true.
And what we get for that will drive what happens in the new subdivision. I think we should take that opportunity to test the market properly.
We might look at potentially going to tender if that's the case. Any other questions? No? Thanks, Christine.
The next item, councillors, is item G3, which is about the organisational structure. So pursuant to section 196 of the Local Government Act, the council is required to adopt an organisational structure that's appropriate to the performance of the local government and its responsibilities. The new structure that is in councillors' pack, and it's recommended that the organisational structure as at the 19th of April 2021 be adopted by council. For council's information, the main changes to the structure is the changes that have happened in the communications department, and then there's also been changes to the community environment branch with the departure of Rod Ainsworth and the changes with the arts and cultural and tourism facilities department.
Thanks, Christine. Questions? Councillor Haberman.
Just a couple of questions. Just the Mayor's Chief of Staff, that just comes under the office of the Mayor and CEO? It doesn't need to be a separate...
No, the Mayor's Chief of Staff doesn't fall through this structure because the Councillor Advisor sits separate as a creature of statute. So it's not actually part of this, it sits to the side. So this is the local government employees. So as the Councillor Advisor is not a local government employee as such, it doesn't fall under the CEO's structure.
Thank you. And also with Rod Ainsworth's position, what's happening there?
I'll just defer to Cabinet.
Plugged in.
Through the CEO, Councillor Haberman, as a result of Rod going and Sue Ann last year, who was the then manager of tourism and events, I've just taken the opportunity to sort of, I guess, put those 2 branches together under one branch. So the new branch is called Arts, Culture, Tourism, Facilities and Events, but also tidies up a little bit of the tourism aspect because Ben has been sitting on the BT board as council's rep since last year, and so managing that tourism partnership relationship between council and BT. And so tourism development has moved across to economic development, tourism facilities, so still Hinkle Hall of Aviation and Ferrymead House will sit under this new branch. So Rod's role has effectively been divided up between a new manager of the Moncrief, who will be focused entirely on the Moncrief. Rod's whole role was looking after both the Moncrief and galleries, and that was obviously a bit of a stretch in trying to do both of those things, particularly given the work that's gone into the Moncrief and how it's changed over the last couple of years. More to performing arts and live theatre. And so there's a new branch manager who's going to be responsible for that entire branch, given that things like Melby Festival, we saw there was a lot of synergies between arts and culture, who effectively provided the content, and the events team, who effectively delivered it as an event. So they've been working collaboratively, albeit they were in separate branches, so I just took the opportunity to put them together to get greater collaboration between those particular things, and I guess reflect, more importantly, where the current demands are. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thanks, Gav. Councillor
Thank you.
Mitchell first, sorry.
I'm just thinking along the lines of Councillor Haberman, where he asked where the Mayor's Chief of Staff fits in on the organisational structure, because I did assume that he would be in Office of the Mayor and CEO. So if he's not a local government employee, why is that? Is council paying him?
It's under the Local Government Act, the way that the councillor advisors are set up. Councils will recall the advice that came in. So the councillor advisor reports to the mayor and doesn't report to the CEO, which is why the organisational, the operational branch that all falls in under the CEO is the way that it is. The only thing we could do to change the organisational structure is to put a box out separate, out on the side, which would include the councillor advisor.
Reporting to the Mayor in the organisational structure?
It does report to the mayor, but you won't be able to see it from that diagram because it's got elected councillors, mayor and councillor. So you wouldn't have a tidy line to just have that box down to councillor advisor, given that the councillor advisor only reports to the mayor.
So you don't believe that from an aesthetics or layout point of view that you couldn't separate the councillors from the mayor and then have the Mayor's Chief of Staff located reporting to the Mayor?
Can I just clarify why we're considering this? This is a requirement under the Local Government Act for the council to adopt a structure.
Because I'm questioning it, Mr. CEO, because the Mayor's Chief of Staff is paid by council and he is a big part of the equation when it comes to mayors and councillors and being part of what takes place in the organisation. I think he should be noted on there somewhere.
Well, how about, given the fact that it's a new position, that the requirements for that position are spelled out in the Local Government Act, that we'll seek advice from the Department of Local Government on the basis of that proposed structure and see what their advice is as to how it should be reflected.
So that hasn't already been done?
Not by me,
Okay.
but I'm happy to take advice from the department, and if they give us advice as to how to reflect that on that structure.
No, I just thought that, all employees are reflected here somewhere, and
And I think the
pay-
problem is that this is, as I've said several times in this room, this is a newly created position. The Act, it is unlike any other position in the organisation. There's no other position other than the CEO that the Act spells out how it's to be done,
Right.
and what the requirements are. So on the basis that
there's
this
no reportability to anyone other than the Mayor.
I'm not going to go back over what we've already discussed previously. Several times we've received legal advice from this, we've received advice from the department. We're not here to have that discussion today, but I'm happy to take your question as to how that position should appear on the chart and take advice from the department.
That's all right, Mr. CEO. I can see that you're quite adamant in not having the Mayor's Chief of Staff on the organisational structure.
I didn't
Thank
say
you
that
very
at all.
much.
I said I'd take advice from the department, given the fact there seems to be some question because it's a newly created position.
If you feel the need to take advice,
Well, clearly I do.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I'll leave it. If it comes up, I'll bring it to you in the interim.
Okay. Councillor Barnes.
Mr. CEO, just following on from what Councillor Mitchell was talking about, my recollection is that this council approved the position of a councillor advisor for the mayor, according to the Act. Councillor Mitchell was referring to...
Sorry, Councillor Barnes? Mike?
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Councillor Mitchell's referring to a Chief of Staff, while Christine is talking about a Councillor Advisor, and I think that's where the confusion is coming from. I don't believe that this council ever approved the position of Chief of Staff. It approved the position of a Councillor Advisor, and I think that's where the confusion's coming from. So I think we need some clarity on that, because that would alleviate a lot of concerns, I think, that Councillor Mitchell's raising.
Well, I dispute that in its entirety. There's no confusion because of the title of the position. We've already had that discussion in here as well, and we've amended any of our policies to reflect them where we've had council advisor / chief of staff, which is the same position, just to remove any doubt.
Councillors, can I just add as well, this section 196, it's about the appointment of other local government employees, and it sits under Division 2, which is about other local government employees. So the section in the Act, I'm sure if we go to the department, will come back to us and will clarify that the organisational structure that we're here to resolve today is about local government employees, and the Act is quite specific that a council advisor, the Mayor's Chief of Staff, is not classed as a local government employee for the purposes of the Act, which is why I guess he doesn't need to be shown in this part here.
Thanks, Christine. Any other questions? Okay, move on to corporate plan.
Item G1, corporate plan. So as councillors will recall, we've been involved with planning workshops which were facilitated through Helen Skippen. That planning workshop outlined, some changes to the corporate plan, and the major changes that we've got are revised game changes and descriptions, core roles and advocacy priorities included, update to our regional asset information, removal of capital projects, operating themes updated, and description added to the vision of what council considers to be our best in our community. The plan has been circulated to council's employees and also to the wider community, where submissions were encouraged. That was on the 30th of March. Council did receive one public submission and a number of submissions from council staff. They have all been incorporated into the plan, and the final version of the plan was circulated to councillors yesterday. So the recommendation is that the council adopt the corporate plan 2021 to 2026.
Councillors, as the report states, we've got a lift at the Childers Palace Backpackers Memorial that is currently maintained by Schindler Lifts. We have a contract with Schindler Lifts. We want to renegotiate the pricing of that contract, so we're seeking to utilise the exemption under section 235B of the local government regulation that would enable us to deal exclusively with them rather than seeking competitive tenders.
I think we're skipping ahead, John.
Morning, councillors. I'm dealing with item O1, which is partnership and sponsorship grant application for Lifelight Foundation. So Lifelight, as councillors aware, operate the helicopter rescue service out at the airport now. It's part of the aeromedical precinct. We have provided for the last couple of years $50,000 financial assistance through our partnership and sponsorships grant process to offset some of the costs of their operational costs. As councillors are probably aware, and they've had given presentations previously, they are not fully funded and require sponsorships, grants, and I guess entrepreneurial assistance in trying to cover the costs of their operations. So this proposal is purely and simply just to, once again, this financial year provide $50,000 in accordance with what we've done historically. The $50,000 is already budgeted for, so happy to take any questions if there are any.
For part of the Bargara Admin Centre. There was a space that was previously unleased in the Ag Tech Hub. That space is proposed to be leased to the Burnett Mary Regional Group. The Burnett Mary Regional Group are a community organisation and registered not-for-profit organisation. They do currently lease a portion of the property in the Ag Tech Hub already, so this will expand their area that they'll have under lease. They're proposing that the commencement date will be no earlier than the 28th of April, and the alignment of the lease will be so that it aligns with the expiry date of their current area, and that there'll be a further option of 5 years for extending that lease. The proposed rent is presently 50% less than market value, which council is able to offer to the Burnett Mary Regional Group, given that they're a community group and the economic benefits that the Ag Tech precinct will have for the region. The rent will increase annually by 2% or CPI, whichever is the higher, and the remainder of the conditions will be on council's standard lease document. And the recommendation is that council apply the exception in section 2361B2, given that it's a community organisation, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the lease and finalise those lease negotiations. Next one is item 03, another lease. This is for the Burnett Heads Progress and Sports Association. They presently have a lease at Jack Norgate Oval, which is state-owned reserve land for recreation. That's at 19 Zunker Street. That lease is due to expire on the 30th of June 2021, and the association have been working with council about renewing their lease for a further 10-year term. Rent will be proposed at the community group rate, and the remainder of the terms will be on council's standard lease terms. It's recommended that council apply the exception in section 236, given that it's a community organisation, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the lease with the Progress Association. The next item's 04, which is a lease of part of the airport to Bitten Holdings Proprietary Limited. It's lease BE. The tenant is a current tenant for one of the general aviation hangars. Their lease is due to expire, and it's proposed that a further lease be entered into for a term of 5 years with a further 5-year option. The rent is for market value and will be subject to annual increases of 3%. The lessee will be responsible for their outgoings, and the remainder of the terms of the lease will be on council's standard lease document. It's recommended that section 1C3 of the local government regulation be applied, given that it's a renewal of a lease to an existing tenant, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the lease with Bitten Holdings for that site BE located at the airport.
Thank you. Questions on that one? No, all good.
The next item is item 05, which is a lease to the State of Queensland. 13 Brewer Street at Burnett Heads, which does back onto Jack Norgate Oval, is a reserve for local government with a sub-purpose of State Emergency Centre. Council is the trustee of that land. The State of Queensland, through the Public Safety Business Agency, wish to lease that property for the benefit of the Burnett Heads Rural Fire Brigade and wish to enter into a 10-year lease. And those lease terms will be on Council standard lease document, and it's recommended that Council apply the exception in 2361B1, given that it's a disposal of a lease interest to a government agency, and that the CEO be authorised to enter into the 10-year lease.
Thanks, Christine. Questions on that one? No? All good? Thank you. We found some planners. Excellent. We'll go back to L1. Councillor Learmonth is going to clear it. Thanks, Sarah.
Apologies, Council. Sorry, I thought briefing started at 10. So this morning I'm presenting item L1, which deals with the development application for a reconfiguration of a lot, one lot into two lots, located at 106 Effie Walker Street. Councillors, as you might be aware, this site has existing development approvals for a shopping complex in place, with the most notable relevant history being an approval overriding the planning scheme under the Sustainable Planning Act from 2013, and a material change of use for a stage shopping centre, which was approved in 2016. The subject lot reconfiguration application is to enable the approved shopping centre to be undertaken in a staged manner, and is subject to code assessment under the Bundaberg Council Regional Planning Scheme. The proposed reconfiguration aims to subdivide the subject site into two new lots comprising an area of 2.3437 hectares and 6.2 hectares respectively. As a consequence of the proposed reconfiguration, the applicant has also made a concurrent minor change request, which is being assessed in parallel with this request, and is aimed to align the approved district centre with any development permit for a reconfiguration of a lot. Officers have assessed the minor change request, and it's anticipated that this minor change request will be determined under delegation in parallel with this reconfiguration of a lot application. This will ensure that the staging and the development site under both approvals are appropriate and not in conflict with each other. The key consideration by officers in the report before you has been infrastructure provision. The intention is that the provision of infrastructure, such as road construction and stormwater infrastructure, will be implemented as part of this reconfiguration of a lot approval. Councillors, upon review of the report before you today, an error in one of the conditions regarding road construction was found, in that the current condition reads that the road will be designed in accordance with the approved plans, but it's actually anticipated this road will be designed and constructed, and the applicant's aware that council would like them to construct the road as part of this reconfiguration of a lot. So after this meeting, I will update condition 18 so that it's clear that they do have to construct it. The second key consideration by officers was reciprocal access easements. However, this was determined to be better placed in the conditions on the existing shopping centre. And you'd also see in the application before you that it was subject to code assessment, therefore public notification was not required. However, council did receive one not properly made submission. This not properly made submission was considered by officers in their assessment. Councillors, you'll see that after assessing the application against all of the planning scheme, officers conclude that the application complies and can be conditioned to comply with the planning scheme, and approval is recommended.
Thanks, Sarah. Questions and comments? Councillor Barnes.
Just referring to figure 6. The one with the stormwater management. Are there any plans that show the upstream catchment area and the downstream area through Auburn Wetlands? I see where that's going there, but is there any indication of where the actual catchment?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Barnes. Mike?
Sorry?
Your microphone.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so are there any plans that show the upstream catchment area and a downstream dispersal area, or where it might be running through the, what do you call it, wetlands at all? Because I know that shows the area there, but I'm just wondering if there's any extended plans.
I might just defer to our Senior Planner, Grant Barringer, who assessed the application.
Through the Chair. Look, there was extensive studies done, Councillor Barnes, over that site. It was undertaken by GHD Consulting. We don't actually have one for you today, but we can foreshadow that. It does a catchment-wide study for that particular site and surroundings. And yeah, we could get that for the...
Can we get a copy of that one?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Was there any particular questions around it?
No, just, I mean, obviously it's a fairly controversial proposal, but I'd just like to get some visual facts, if you like, so that I can see where the actual catchment is and what the possible downstream effects could be,
Sure.
rather than just a slight specific.
Sure.
Thank you.
So if we get that out to all councillors prior to the council considering this at the meeting. Thanks, Grant. Sarah, back to you. Any other questions? No? All right, we'll distribute that additional information during the week, and you'll make an amendment to condition 18? Thanks. All right, we'll get Councillor Learmonth back. And Quinaba landfill, Gav, you going to do that one? Okay.
Hello again, councillors. Item P1, this is just a preferred supplier arrangement that we wish to enter into. So ATC Williams, sorry, bit of local application applied there. ATC Williams Proprietary Limited are a surveying and modelling company that we have used historically in our waste management facilities. So just to give a bit of background, in order for us to get an environmental licence to run a landfill, what we have to do is we have to provide a survey and a final finished model. So what we expect will be the completed height of our waste facility once we've put all the possible waste we can in. We then submit that as part of our environmental licence application. It's assessed by the State Government Department of Environment, and then they approve then what they call a fill model, which is a maximum height we're allowed to fill to. At Quinaba particularly, we've been doing various things to try to look at how we can maximise the use of that facility and also how we can minimise the cost of finally capping it. So At the moment, the approved capping process is effectively we put a metre of soil over the final amount of waste we put in. We then put a clay cap on top of that, so that's about a foot thick, and then soil on top of that, and effectively then just put grass on it. What we've been doing over the last couple of years is running what we call a phyto cap trial. So the intention with the phyto cap is you plant trees that effectively act by transpiring all the water. So if any rain, because rain is the greatest danger to a landfill, you don't want water percolating into a landfill, which is why the current approved process in the Queensland government is a clay cap to effectively put a shell over the top of the waste. The phyto cap, what it does is uses trees to transpire any rain that falls in. So effectively rain falls, only gets so much through the soil profile, then picked up by the roots of the trees and transpired out. So effectively stops the water penetrating through. So we've been trialling that. We've been trying to get approval from the state government to accept that as an acceptable capping process. It's about 30% of the cost of a normal clay cap, so obviously a significant saving. But what it also means is that we have to change the profile of our landfills, our final finish model, because we don't want to grow trees on hills effectively, so flatten them out a little bit and change the profile. In order to do that, we've got to go and amend our environmental licence, which is why we want to engage ATC Williams to do that work. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Gav. Questions? No? Straightforward. Thank you.
Next one.
I've got a conflict. Mitchell and Councillor McPhee.
I'm T1,
Oh, you're T1, sorry.
and so is Councillor Mitchell for T1 as well.
Oh, a T1 as well. Okay, but R1. Right.
Thank you, councillors. Item R1, which is an extension of term for rent relief cost curve proprietary limits. So cost curve is the company name of the travel agent across the road, so operates and currently leases the property next to our Civic Arcade. We've had a discussion about this previously in consultation meetings. Just indicate that the previous proprietor passed away last year. He's handed it over to his wife, who has been running it, obviously during COVID. They've been significantly impacted and are yet to make a decision going forward about what they're going to do with the business. And so they wrote to council, we're seeking effectively a rent relief for the period of 1 October to 31st of March. Bear in mind we're already in April. Because we originally had provided part of a rent relief period during our COVID incentives, which went up to 30 September, they obviously haven't been able to operate for a large period of this, and obviously everyone's aware of the impacts on the travel industry, so they're seeking this extension to the end of last month. So happy to take any questions if there are any. The value of it is in the report, about $15,300 if we were to agree.
Thanks, Gav. Questions? No? All good? We'll get Councillor McPhee back. Councillor Mitchell back, I should say.
Okay, councillors, next item is S1, rent relief for Airport Cafe. So as councillors are aware, once again, similar sort of situation. This is a business, this business operates the carry-on cafe out of the airport. They had received an initial rent-free period as part of the initial COVID support package that we provided last year. It went till the end of September, then requested an extension after that, given the impact on the airline industry, which obviously has a flow-on effect to their business. They were provided an extra extension till the 31st of December, and then a further 50% discount was agreed at the start of this year, taking them up until the end of March. They've once again written into council at the end of JobKeeper program, which finished at the end of March. They've indicated that they are unable financially to sustain the business at this point in time, so they haven't opened since the end of March, and are proposing to do a bit of a restructure of their business and provide a further proposal back to council. So they've asked that for the period they're going to be closed, which is the month of April, can they get their rent waived for that period? That monthly rental is a figure of $1,921.88. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Gav. Questions, Councillor Barnes?
Thanks, Gavin. I guess, from my point of view, this is a fairly unique situation. So while a business, say, in Wollongong Street or a shopping centre would be adversely affected by COVID, this business is 100% reliant on airport passengers going through it. So I think that when we have a look at this, we need to recognise just how unique this business is and what the actual customer catchment comprises.
As I said, is the only operator out there, the only facility we have, as I mentioned to Council just recently, allowed effectively a small coffee cart to operate within the terminal space, just to provide the basic element of a cup of coffee. But certainly if their business case, if they came back to us and said, listen, it doesn't stack up, we would then have to consider whether we go back out to market, bearing in mind that when we've done this previously, they were the only applicants. And I guess with the uncertainty, one would always hope that things are on the improve and that the airlines are getting back to capacity, but we've still only got the one operator in Qantas at the moment. Their numbers are improving, but every little jolt we have with those shutdowns dramatically impacts passengers, and they immediately almost cancelled flights after the last one. So, as a result of people being unwilling to fly, so we would then have to look at potentially staffing ourselves, which wouldn't, from my perspective, be the ideal situation.
Thanks, Gav. Any other questions on that one? All right. No other late items or confidential? No. Okay, so we've got one item in confidential, and Councillor McPhee has declared a conflict and